All right, we're live now, guys. So, well, hello to both of you. First of
Hey,
all,
how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you guys?
Doing okay, thanks.
Thanks. So, how's the situation with the coronavirus there? Where you're at? Everything okay, or you had any problems?
Uh, Connecticut is probably like one of the worst states in the country, so we haven't gone out really at all, other than to
That was
go out
before
every.
the coronavirus.
Huh?
It was before the coronavirus one of the worst states.
It was. It was. Now it's worse. So, but we pretty much have just we've gone out like maybe once every 2 weeks just to get food. Other than that, we've just been in.
That's
So
just
we've
like
been
me.
yeah.
That's why I don't show on camera because right now I'm looking like a bear.
Where are you located?
Well, I'm actually in London right now,
Okay.
in the UK, and sometimes it's difficult to arrange these streams because I do streams with guys all the way from Australia, some in the north of Canada, some in South America, and then you gotta conciliate all these time zones. I'm in the middle. That's all very fine and well, but everybody else is 8 hours, 9 hours away from me.
Yeah.
So it's really great you guys actually managed to be here at this time. Hope it's
Yeah.
not imposing on your schedule.
No, no, and I appreciate you keeping in touch with me because it was one thing or another why we couldn't set something up. So I'm glad we finally are able to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I had to get you here on the channel because I've been very curious about Monarch Comics since I first found you guys. Let me just, by the way, copy that link of the stream. Now that we're up and running decently, I'm sending you the link now, and you can share that on your socials
Oh,
and get some
great,
people in.
cool.
Okay. So that's the actual link of the stream as it is being shown on YouTube right now. So
Oh, okay, so I can just share this on our
yeah, that's it.
I'll copy it onto our
Yeah,
Monarch page.
yeah. Put it wherever you want to give you some time to sort that out.
Well, you guys can still see me. I can't see you, but you can keep talking. That's fine. It'll just take me like 2 seconds. Um, what's the name of the show that I should post?
Well, I call this usually the Lewis Michael show.
Oh, okay.
Um, but you can announce it as whatever way you
No,
want. I
that's
mean,
fine.
I'm the title that the show has is a one-on-one. As usually the solo interviews, that's what the name that I give them. So I'm,
Okay.
I'm actually going to do it myself on Twitter. Get some guys in here. Okay. Okay. I gotta make sure I'm on the right screen, so, so I can move around all the buttons and all the control. Okay, so here we are then. So yeah, I mean, I came across Monarch Comics quite a few years ago. I mean, of course, me and Vincent, like you just said, we've been in touch for a while, trying to get to come here and have a little chat. But best thing is just better you guys introduce yourselves to the general audience. So, Vincent, why don't you go first? Just say basically what you do at Monarch Comics, and then we take it on to Blake, and then we'll come back to you to explain the whole story.
Okay. Well, I'm the publisher, and I also am the creator and writer of the Witch Hunter comic book. Um, and I'm an editor on uh, Blake's book, which is the Saga of Evil Monkey Man, and a book by Joe Kitchell, which is that I co-created the title with him called The Last, which is about Vikings essentially solving the first X Files. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Me and Blake have been partners for a few years. I've been doing Monarch since 1993,
Hmm.
when I first introduced Witch Hunter at New York Comic Con, and we LLC'd as Monarch in 2008, and me and Blake have been together for about half that time, just sort of taking the company and just building it up to the next level where we've been increasing our distribution and getting more press and rebranding ourselves with our website and all that stuff.
And Blake, so what do you do at Monarch then?
I originally came on board as the colorist for Vin's book, Witch Hunter. Um, and like Vin mentioned, I then started writing my own book, The Saga of Evil Monkey Man.
Yeah.
And I also am now coloring Joe's book, The Last, and just out of abundance of charity, I redesigned Vin's webpage. That's how we started working together. And now Vin has granted me the title of art director.
All right. Okay, so I was reading an interview with you actually, Vincent. I think it's on Reddit. Omni Comic. I don't know
Oh
if you
yeah,
remember that. Yeah.
yeah. That was they were actually really nice. I mean, everybody that's reached out to us has been really nice, but that was a good piece. I remember.
Yeah, I was reading that here, and he says you come up with the idea of a witch hunter in 1976,
Hmm.
and you've been for many years writing this huge amount of lore behind it. Yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna start screen sharing now. Let's see if I can, and because first of all, I'm gonna plug your website here,
Okay.
so people straight away know where to actually find the comics that we're talking about. So
Yeah,
as a kind of a
Blake did a great redesign of the site when we started working together, and he's constantly updating it. So what you'll see on there now is
Mhm.
a lot of new ways that people can interact with us and reach out. We actually have a uh, new promotion that's going on while everybody's stuck inside that Blake had come up with to share first issues of our comics for free as
Mhm.
PDFs. So you can actually see that on either of our Facebook pages, and there's a new landing page on the Monarch Comics site.
Right. Well, it's definitely a nice clean site that you got here. So Monarch Comics. So you guys are running three main titles. Yeah, Witch Hunter, Evil Monkey Man, and The Last. But then you got a few other one-off titles here: Mercury, Winter Lantern, United Forces.
Yeah, the Winter Lantern is going to be it's going to be a graphic novel. It started out as a one shot. It's a horror title, kind of like involving the elder gods, kind of like in a Cthulhu like way. Leaf and United Forces are going to be a flip book, and they're going to be a
Hmm.
series of mini series. So you're going to see, say, 4 issues at a time of those two together as a flip book, and then they'll come out as a trade paperback, and then they'll do another one. As they complete each 4 issues for their respective stories. And Mercury is a one shot that we connected with the creator earlier this year, and that is I guess that's kind of like an urban horror title.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so the great impressive thing about you guys, about Monarch Comic, and especially about what Vincent has been doing, is this Witch Hunter series here. I mean, you guys are up all the way up to 30, 30 something issues. Is that right?
It's up to
Last time
issue
I saw.
30 now. Yeah, 31 is in production right now,
Right.
and I've kept it mostly to a quarterly frequency over the past few years. So
Hmm.
I just always make sure that we get 4 issues out in a year. And I know for an independent title that's a lot, but I had always planned on it being an ongoing and telling a complete story from beginning to end. I'm One of my big inspirations is Babylon 5, and
Uh huh.
I was always very taken with the fact that he knew the entire story right from the beginning, which is why the callbacks in later seasons would tie together with something that you would see in like the first episode of the first season. And I've always kept that in mind with doing Witch Hunter, so I wanted to make sure that I was able to pull that off. Um, so yeah, there's quite a ways to go, but yeah, it's definitely been fun getting them out on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a series I'm really interested about it to speak about it with you because I mean this is an impressive run. I mean, for
Thank
an
you.
indie label, especially because this is all on your back, right? I mean, you're the writer, you're the creator, and obviously you gotta scout for the talents to put all these things into production, right? I mean, how challenging has it been to keep, like you just said, to keep this on a quarterly basis, to manage to get 3 to 4 issues a year? I mean, it's a lot of work.
It is.
Uh,
It definitely is. I mean, it's been pretty challenging. I mean, but when you do something you love, you find a way to get it done. When I first started, I was I made sure that I got a bunch of issues done before I even released the first one because I knew
mm,
that anybody that I was working with would have other assignments that they would need to complete. They had life always getting in the way. And I don't want to just as a fan myself, I don't want to be encountering a big lag because then you even if it's something you like, you lose interest.
mhm,
So I made sure that I got a bunch of issues done before I even released the first one just to account for any, unforeseen delays, which happened.
mhm,
And I was very fortunate to, even though the art teams have changed over the years, I always try and keep to a more European style, a more classic European style, like from the 70s.
right.
Frank Bruner is my favorite artist, which is why I was very fortunate to be able to get him to do 10 covers in the early issues. And I'd like to work with him again as well. And the other artists that I connected with all drew in a very, again, classic sort of 70s European style because I felt that it really lent itself to the tone of the story.
Yeah.
It's gotten a lot easier since I met Blake because uh, there's there's a mindfulness about, as Blake puts it, doing things on purpose and keeping things consistent, which I've always been a big believer in. But when you're dealing with people that you can't always see face to face, as some of these artists are, spread across the world, sometimes you need a little bit of extra effort, you know, uh, between the people that are actually part of the company, like me and him, to sort of correct certain things and keep certain things looking like maybe they weren't intended to look, and we have to sort of massage stuff uh, back to sort of a consistent style.
Hmm.
Um, some of the ththings have been corrected with color because sometimes people have maybe not really gotten Witch Hunter's design exactly right, and we've had to go in and sort of
Hmm.
correct that with the color. So it's a challenge, but it's been a fun challenge getting it to look the way it does and for the story to flow the way it does.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, one of the things as I was browsing here the website another time, I was curious to see the actual art team that you employ over the course of the series, and obviously, as we're actually looking with the art on show and the names there under the title, the art team tends to move around, shuffle around a bit, tends to change, like you just mentioned. So, and yeah, I mean, that's part of the what I think is quite quite an achievement to be able to make get the whole thing to gel together. And work with talent that is spread all over the world. So but nonetheless, I mean, it's I still got to give kudos to the writing, obviously, because you're able to create a story that holds up for these many issues. I mean, it is difficult. It's quite impressive to do that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, one of the things is that you don't always get back what you give people in a script. So a lot of times I'll get back things that are completely different than what I put in the script. And for me, I actually always enjoy that because it gives me a challenge of, okay, how am I going to make this work? I mean, I can send pages back, but I try not to do that. One, you don't
Hmm.
really want to, frustrate people. Either they don't understand what you're asking or they don't have the time to go back and do it. Even though, you're paying for the work, you have to kind of like, pick your battles. So a lot of times I'll just sort of tweak what the script originally said to fit the artwork that I came back and it's always
Hmm.
actually come out better than the way I originally intended it. One time, a guy actually, I had described um, somebody that Witch Hunter encounters. I had described him as a 10-year-old boy wearing rags that looked like it came from like sort of the 19th century England, and the person he sent back looked like a general in his late 20s, in a full uniform. And I just laughed when I saw
That's
the page.
crazy.
So I just said, and they were he was Witch Hunter was meeting the person in limbo or purgatory, and he said I was under the impression that I was supposed to be meeting the spirit of a child, and he said, well, you came here looking for a soldier in your war. He said, so you're seeing me the way you want to see me, and that wound up coming out even better than I originally had intended. So
Yeah,
you kind of have to be flexible, when you're working the way we're working. We don't have always the luxury of having stuff redrawn. Not if we want to keep to any type of schedule. So
absolutely. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I mean, has been any particular team or any particular artist that you would like to keep them for as much as possible, as many issues as possible, or are you quite happy to keep on working in the way you're working now in that process of you do what you can with what you get.
well, I mean, I prefer consistency. I prefer to have uh, one look for the entire series, and people have had to leave for their own reasons, or I've had to get other people for my own reasons. But what I've had to do is just try and look for people who keep to a consistent style. I mean, our team I'm working with now, I'd be happy to work with them for the rest of the series. So hopefully that'll be the case.
Hmm.
I do have to go back and redo a couple of issues for different reasons. So I'm going to be using people that I've used in the past in order to sort of fill in those gaps, because that way you'll see them more than you've seen them up to this point. So it'll kind of be adding a little bit more uniformity for those issues that need to be redone. Right now, I'm going to be redoing, I think, three or four as we've expanded our distribution, and we're continuing to do that. So there are certain issues as I go back and I realize this is going to have a wider release now and more people are going to see it. I really would like to kind of like either tweak an issue or just have it completely redrawn, since I'm going to be rewriting or relettering certain portions of them.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's actually going to help even add even more consistency to it. Which you always want to when you go back and look at stuff, you always find stuff you can change.
Of
I'm
course.
fortunate for the fact that I actually have a reason to change it and I have the opportunity to.
Hmm. You're thinking about changing the first issues or a few issues here and there? Is there
No, no,
any
just
particular?
there are select issues. There are a couple in within the first 12 that I'm going to redo, and then a
Okay.
couple between in the upper teens that I'm going to redo, and I think that's it. I think it's four or five total. Um, but yeah, for the most part, it's it's going to stand as is. As I said, when Blake has done redesigns on the issues as we're moving forward and creating trade paperbacks,
Hmm.
he's able to really enhance the stuff that's already there. So there are certain things that he's doing too that don't necessarily involve changing the art, but enhancing the color, altering the design, all that adds to and plus we're looking at different paper stocks now with different printers that we're starting to do business with. So all of that can always change the look entirely. Like we changed stock on one thing recently, and it became like a totally different book.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
It
he's
happens,
actually
yeah.
coloring the last now, so the last looks like nothing like it looked in black and white, and it was beautiful in black and white.
Hmm.
Fawzi, who does the art for that, he's incredible, and Blake just added another layer to it, which is just it's a masterpiece.
And there's nothing wrong with having different art teams from run to run because heck, DC and Marvel have been doing it for 70 years. Huh? Different art teams on the same book every 6 or 12 issues they change anyway. So and it still works. And sometimes,
Yeah, it
like
can
you said,
work.
it works to their advantage.
Well, we were raised. The two of us were raised, reading comics when you would have Jack Kirby do 100 issues of the Fantastic Four, or John Buscema would do untold issues of Fantastic Four, or you would have John Romita draw a bunch of issues of Spider-Man. And when I started reading Spider-Man, it was when uh, a colleague of Blake's had started drawing it, Ross Andrew, and that was my first exposure to Spider-Man. And Ross Andrew drew it for years, and it's kind of like when again, if you're filming a TV show and you're using a certain type of set and you're using a certain type of um, design coordinator for the set and
Hmm.
certain lighting and certain color, the show is going to look a certain way. And if you change it too drastically, too often, people feel that they become displaced. And if anything, you want people to forget that they're watching something, that they're immersed in a world. And so, whenever possible, it's nice to be able to keep the same art, the same style, if not the same artist.
Yeah.
Um, Blake has some, phenomenal artist that totally suits the style for Evil Monkey Man that that I love.
Before we go to Blake and Monkey Man, because that's your title, right, Blake? Before we go there, Vincent, you want to just give the pitch the for Witch Hunter, so just the abridged story, just so for whoever is interested in actually picking it up,
Sure, sure,
they'll know basically what they're getting into.
sure, yeah. Um, the the basic pitch of it is that people don't believe in magic anymore or their own potential. And there's a cult called the Scarlet Circle that's been in existence since probably the beginning of civilization. And they realized that the old races, like the dark elves, the dwarves, the dragons, the goblins, they all used to rule this planet and they took care of it. And the more humans evolved, the worse the planet got. And I sort of took a take like similar to Hitler in 1939 when he, addressed the German people and said, do you like being held down? Do you like this? And that's essentially what the Scarlet Circle did. It basically like stirred up all these races that used to live here and that were no longer believed in and forced to flee to other dimensions, or the dwarves were forced to flee into mountains as they watched, humanity basically think that Stonehenge was just a calendar instead of a site used for communication and
Hmm.
teleportation and keeping the earth in balance. And so what they've done in modern times is that they've bought certain companies, they've bought politicians, and people invest their energy when they buy a product or they buy into certain media or they vote for somebody, and they're giving of energy that they don't even believe they possess. And that energy is all being used to reshape the earth and sort of bring it back to the way it used to be in olden times. And once we've been drained of our energy, people aren't needed anymore. And what Witch Hunter is trying to do is wake people up to their potential before it's gone. But that's not really easy to do because we're kind of set in our ways. So he's constantly trying to sort of fight the Scarlet Circle from taking over the world and getting rid of humanity before it's too late. But what I can say about the book is that things get a hell of a lot worse before they get better. So things don't always work out the way the hero plans. And one of the things that really I enjoy writing about it is the fact that Witch Hunter doesn't disagree with the villains. In a lot of cases, the hero often disagrees with the villains. Witch Hunter doesn't. He was part of a coven in the 1600s, and he was resurrected in modern day, and he basically saw that people just keep getting worse and worse and worse, very very self-involved and not caring for the planet they live on. And so he's kind of like fighting kind of like an uphill battle because he has no problem with what the Scarlet Circle does. He just sort of doesn't like their methods. Um,
Mm.
and basically, I was influenced by Babylon 5, the original Planet of the Apes series, Tomb of Dracula by Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan,
Hmm.
and Commandy by Jack Kirby. So what you're getting when you read the book is you're getting that that high adventure, that breakneck pace, and if you pick up if you learn anything along the way, it comes through the action. There's not a tremendous amount of exposition.
That's
It's
great.
just we try and keep it light and fun, but at the same time, sort of tell people you're more than you think you are. So if you like those influences that I mentioned,
Hmm.
anybody who likes the Supernatural TV show, the quickest elevator pitch I can give to people is that Witch Hunter is like if Dean from Supernatural had superpowers. So the same irreverent, caustic sense of humor, um, fighting the same type of monsters, except in Witch Hunter's case, they're organized, and that's where the trouble comes in.
Quick question: is he a solo hero? Does he work alone? Is there any more like him, or obviously you will have a team supporting him, isn't it?
In the beginning, it was just him, and as the series goes along, he'll acquire a bunch of allies where it becomes not necessarily a team book, but in a lot of instances, he'll be either fighting alongside one or more of them. And there are certain issues where they're all gathered together. In fact, in issue 30, I brought back everybody on the hero side and everybody on the villain side that had been introduced over the first 29 issues, and I set them against each other. And I've always liked those old Marvel and DC covers where the heroes are on one side and the villains are on the other side, and they're charging toward each other. So that's what the cover
Hmm.
of number 30 is.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, for the most part, he goes solo, but he draws on people as he needs to as he needs their skills.
That's great. And one more question: how many more issues you have planned in order to be able to tell the whole story?
Well, right now, I see the issue 30 as the halfway point for the overarching story that I've been telling. And when we get to roughly issue 60, it's going to be the world that I would like to see. And then after that, I'm not gonna stop doing it. But the once we get to the world that I would like to see, there'll be more one-off adventures or more two-issue adventures with him just adventuring in that world. So but issue 1 to 60 is all one story. Although you can pick
Hmm.
up any one issue, and you'll get a complete story because anybody's issue can be their first issue or their last, and nobody should want to have to go into a store and buy something and feel they're not getting the value for their money. So any issue of any of our books that you pick up, you get a complete story. You're organically caught up within the story as to who the major players are and what the point of the book is. And even if you don't pick up any other book, you're going to get a complete story, but you'll get more of the story. You'll get the whole story if you buy the whole series. So that's what you're going to get when you pick up any one issue.
Hmm.
But the main story that I set out to tell will be 60 issues long, and then we'll go on to to individual tales after that.
I mean, there's so many more things I'd like to ask you about this particular series because I mean, longevity of it and about the actual the actual way you put the whole thing together. I wanted to know how much time this takes you out of your actual life because this is it is quite an undertaking, and I mean the logistics of it. I mean, a lot of times I bring people in here in the show, and I mean some of them have like one or two comics under their belt, and this is all indie guys, right, and with
Hmm.
their own labels. Some of them obviously like yourselves are a little bit more organized than others, and they have a little bit more of a portfolio to show, and they've done into a business, they've grown it and all that. But it is rare, at least as far as I know, it is rare in the world of the indie labels to have several titles on offer, especially one that has that many numbers. I mean, obviously, there's other labels with quite a few titles with quite a few issues, but it is not easy to do that. I mean, I know that for a fact. So, but I would want to get back on that note to you, and so then you can explain more, talk more about Monarch Comics properly. But now, obviously, Blake is there waiting as well, and I know he's the writer on Evil Monkey Man. Yeah, so I was just gonna browse your other titles here, and now Blake, I'll give you the stage now, and you can speak about the other titles, the ones that you're directly involved in.
Well, sure. Thanks. I'll break the myth that colorists don't talk now. So now I'll start talking. But Evil Monkey Man, to start off, is legitimately based on a true song, as it says on the bottom of each cover. So I'll quickly just tell you what that means. All the way back to high school, I was friends with or involved with, in one way or another, a bunch of different bands. And one of my best friends, Frank, had a band called Fling Lois, and he literally had a song, Evil Monkey Man. And it's just this really cool, 3 minutes of sci-fi adventure that he came out with. And like I said, this is probably in the late 80s, early 90s. In the early 90s, I was involved in comics heavily. I went to school of visual arts, started working with Mike Esposito, who was an inker at Marvel, DC, legendary, Hall of Famer. And at the time, we were working on we did do some Marvel stuff. We did a lot of Archie stuff and a lot of independent stuff. But we were truly working on putting together a comic book company. This is like 91, I'm thinking. And his best friend, who we literally grew up with and, of course, worked with for years and years and years, was Ross Andrew that Vin had mentioned earlier. So the team of Andrew and Esposito, obviously very famous for their Wonder Woman, Metal Men, Spider-Man work. So Mike and I were putting together this company. Ross had an idea called the Strobe Warrior. So because I'm working with Mike and Ross on the Strobe Warrior, I was also working with Frank and his band, who had this song, Fling Lois. I had this idea, and this is the 90s, remember, when everybody was packaging comics with all sorts of gimmicks. So the idea was Strobe Warrior should come with a song. So I had Frank's band write a song for Strobe Warrior. Unfortunately, this whole adventure of ours, which actually included toys, we actually had a toy division, we had a publishing division, television and movies, and we owned 2 theme parks. We became part of this publicly traded company here. It all fell apart. It went public and fell apart because of finances. And we showed up at our office one day and it had padlocks on it. So it was just a horrible situation.
Oh, my.
Mike obviously was a lot older than me. He was pretty much semi-retired. And I went off into the music business and didn't ever think I'd be involved in comics again. I thought that was the end of the story. Frank went off and became a country star, and we all did our own things. So now we fast forward to about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I was working my normal regular job, which is in the medical field. And an old friend of mine from School of Visual Arts I guess we had contacted her somehow on Facebook. And I was sitting in a hotel drawing something, my abstract art, which is on my arm. And he was in a Dungeons and Dragons game or something of this nature. But it came up that I was doing the Strobe Warrior song, so I asked him to draw a cover for it because my friend Frank wanted to release that song from 20 years earlier. And he asked me to do the cover, so I got my friend Hunter to do the cover. And then I colored it and produced it. So then Hunter called me and said, "Hey, you color comics?" And I was like, "Well, no, not really." And he said, "Well, do you want to color comics?" And I was like, "Well, no, not really." So wherever Hunter's from, that means yes, apparently. So he sent me Vin's book. He sent me a pinup that Vin had for his book. And I had to kind of scramble because some people would say I still don't know how to color, but I definitely didn't know how to color then. I had to watch a YouTube video. And I colored the pinup, and Hunter loved it, and Vin loved it, and they hired me. So I started coloring Witch Hunter. And that's how, to use the line from Godfather 3, they pulled me back in. And I did an issue or two, and I live in Virginia, which is probably a couple 100 miles from Vin, but I happened to be up in his neighborhood. I stopped in with another buddy of ours, Phil, who does Leaf, the new comic we're putting out, Leaf. And Vin was looking to expand. I think his instinct to have more than one title is strong. I agree with that. So we were talking about who has ideas, and Hunter had some ideas, and Phil had some ideas. And I just blurted out Evil Monkey Man. And, this is 2016 or 2015. So, again, it's 25 years after I'd had this idea. And it was nothing more than an idea. It was a song that Frank wrote and an idea. So it was like, okay, let's do it. And then we all went our merry ways. And I had to write a comic then, I guess. I figured, I guess I better come up with more than an idea. So I structured the story based on what Vin had alluded to, the idea of this overarching story and knowing what the whole plan was ahead of time, like the Babylon 5 storyline. So this is a little bit shorter than 60 issues. It's 12 issues for this particular story. This is the Saga of Evil Monkey Man, which tells the origin story of this guy, Mike, who becomes the Monkey Man, and his travels and quest to try to become human again, because he didn't mean to become the Monkey Man, as often people don't mean to become Monkey Men, as far as I know. But to segue into like influences, I wear them on my sleeve. Certainly, growing up in the '70s, the Incredible Hulk TV show was one of them. So that's kind of what I was thinking as an overarching story, was this guy going across the country, like Banner, but also almost like Highway to Heaven with Michael Landon. I don't know if you're familiar with that show, Michael Landon from Little House on the Prairie.
Absolutely.
So it was this idea that this guy was on a quest, but along the way he did heroic things, so to speak. So that's really what it is. And then he gains friends and helpers along the way. Some are actually helping him, and some are maybe not so much. And there's a lot of esoteric Easter eggs along the way, but it is an all ages book. It's kind of like going to I would hope it's kind of like going to a Disney movie, where it's definitely good for it's good for the kids, but adults should be able to enjoy it too. And if you look carefully, like even the pages you're flipping through right now, that they're actually visiting a place called Camp Hero, which is a real place in Montauk, Long Island, where in my story something happens, but in the annals of conspiracy theory USA, that's what we call the Montauk Project, which of course now has a lot more spotlight on it because of the Stranger Things series,
yes.
which was in some way loosely based on Montauk Project. Me including that in my comic actually goes back to my friendship with Ross Andrew. When I was working with Mike and Ross, Ross and I became very, very close friends, and we actually knew the people that wrote the original books for the Montauk Project. And I've been out there. That's really what it looks like. That picture you just X'd out of, that's really what the place looks like. So
the last page? Let me go back there.
Nope, back. If you go back to the previous issue.
Previous issue?
Yeah, number 3.
Oh, right, okay.
But all on the way, even though it's a very cartoony style, the one with the fence where he's running at you through the fence, that was it.
This one here?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh, no. You get it's in that issue. I'm sorry, you're right. It was in number 4. I'm sorry, those are just previews. I'm sorry. I swear I wrote
one with the pirates, yeah?
Yeah, I swear I wrote it. That first page there where they're coming at you through the fence, but that's that lighthouse is accurate.
Yes,
that radar is accurate, and that continues throughout all the issues. They're going to real places, even though it's a cartoon. If anybody decides to go to these places, some of the places where they stop to eat or get gas, you can actually do the same if you.
Oh, I like to play with that sort of stuff in my comics. I put a lot of real places.
So that's all in there. And they might meet some famous people along the way. But I think what, I don't want to go on forever, which I sometimes do. But I think what motivated me, I was just about to pay the guy a compliment, so he left.
Hey, you take it as long as you like.
in an old interview of Vin's, because I came into color mostly because my friend Hunter had called me up to color Witch Hunter, but I of course once I started looking at Vin's website and quickly realized I had to help him there. But he had a bunch of interviews over the years, similar to like what we're doing today. And in one of the interviews, he might not even remember saying it, but he said something along the lines of, we're not necessarily inventing these stories. We're a conduit to an alternate reality that already exists, and it becomes our job as writers to explain it to you.
Oh yeah, well that's one of the biggest sort of foundations of what I'm doing.
Yeah, and as soon as he said that, I was in, and I knew I'd be doing this. If it's 10 people or 10,000 or 10 million, that we'd be doing this together for a while, because I don't. certainly I didn't write the song, but even beyond that, these characters that we're staring at on the screen right now, I know that they exist somewhere, and somehow I'm just a conduit and just letting everybody else know. And so that I become a steward for the story is what I took from Vin's interview all those years ago.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. I mean, the science has established that there is an infinite amount of parallel realities, which means that anything that you imagine exists. And the way that I always came to understand it is that you pick up impressions from these other realities, and when the way it filters through you and comes out, well, that's your style. And then once you do that, you've now created a completely new reality that's based on the one that you sort of picked up on, and and then it just keeps going on and on and on from there. So there's a hell of a lot of Earths out there, that's for sure.
That is a fascinating thought. Actually, I was actually just curiously enough, I was just speaking about that with a good friend of mine just a couple of nights ago because we were watching the new Alex Garland streaming show. She's called
Okay.
Debs. I don't know if you guys have watched that.
I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard of it. Yeah, I keep seeing commercials for it.
Yeah, it's a bit of it takes a bit of time. It's probably not for everyone, but it is exactly eventually is about that. It's about the possibility of alternate realities and superimposed dimensions and stuff like that. And
Mm.
I've always found that fascinating. It's actually one of my favorite sci-fi themes to go to. The other one being time travel,
Yeah, mine
but
too.
everything is a bit related to it
Hmm.
because once you introduce the alternate reality, then you straight away start playing with time as well. So it's not only just a physical alternate space.
Right.
You can actually introduce an add-on to it, which is to play with the actual time continuum. So it's fascinating. It's
Yeah,
a fascinating thing.
I think it definitely takes a lot of skill to to navigate the time space continuum. I mean, the way they do it on Doctor Who is that they explain it by saying that there are fixed points in time that can't change. I think if you go back and you do something, you're creating it's like dropping, one of the analogies I always heard years ago, which makes sense, is you're dropping a rock into a river, and then you ford that stream into two
Hmm.
by doing that,
Mhm.
and you've created a new stream. Now you can still get back to your original stream, but while you're making that change, you've now put yourself into the new stream. So I'm sure that whoever out there that's doing that, we have no idea because we're to us it seems like it's always been that way. So I'm not really not sure of all the details, but I would like to I would like to find out exactly how people are
Hmm.
able to do that. Jumping back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, like what Vincent was saying, I completely, I kind of, well, I was going to say completely, but I partially believe I strongly believe in the possibility of alternate realities. Actually, if there's anything in the sci-fi realm which goes into quantum physics and real science as well, when you actually start touching it, it's something that that's trying to be explored and proven, and is a wild idea. But if there's anything there that I believe that enough time and technology will probably one day prove it, is a possibility of alternate realities. I think
Mm, sure.
it's I mean it's really out there. It's just really abstract stuff, but there is a lot to be said about it.
Yeah,
And
it can make your head hurt for sure.
yeah,
And
well,
I mean, I can only go so far sometimes. Then I'm like, I really need to take a break because you wind up sort of like pretzeling your own mind, and
yeah.
it's fascinating. But like the stuff with Montauk, for instance, I go so far in terms of like watching stuff or researching stuff, and then it just gets terrifying, and then I have to back off for a
Mhm.
little bit.
By the way, these are great colors. I mean, you do the colors for the covers as well, or just interior?
I do the interior. Remember, I had mentioned that I watched the video to teach myself how to color for Witch
Yes.
Hunter, and I do think I'm getting kind of good now.
Blake's my favorite color.
I thank you, Vin. I think I'm getting good, and Vin hears me say this all the time because, I'm not trying to say anything bad about anybody the way they color, but a lot of what we see in modern comics is very graffiti-like, and I think that the best colorists. Well, let me restart by saying this. My favorite book is Hellboy. The artwork, the story, and the colors. And it's because everything gets out of each other's way. So the best colorist is going to make the penciler and the inker look better, not make themselves look better. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right. But ultimately, everybody is there to tell the story. Just like in a band, we don't want to necessarily know it's the best guitarist, the best drummer, or the best bassist. We want to know it's the best song because that's what counts. So every instrument serves the song. Same thing here. Every artist, whether it's the penciler, even the letterer, and where the lettering is going, the bubbles, that all counts because even though I went to art school and I'm in comics because of the art, and that's my favorite thing about comics, what I've come to believe is that the art is not going to make the book. Art can only kill the book, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's all about the
Absolutely.
story. Certainly, the art absolutely sets the tone. And oddly enough, I now feel not because I color, but the color is what is going to get your attention, especially on the cover. So
Yes.
to go back to your original question about the covers, those are actually colored by K. Michael Russell, who's mostly an Image colorist, but I think he's done now some Marvel, maybe DC. But it was his video that I watched to learn how to color, and he has become, I think, one of the internet's most well-known instructors for coloring comics. So K. Michael Russell, you can look him up. He has a great course and continuous instruction and a group on Facebook for anybody who's looking to do this. And he's a phenomenal colorist, as you can see from the covers. And I actually just gave him the covers for number 5 and number 6 to color. He's working on them right now. And it's just the collector in me. I think I'm going to have him do all 12, well, there'll probably be 15 because there'll be 3 trades too. All the way to the right there is the
Yeah, you got
paperback.
the trade here. Yeah.
And this talk about corny fanboy kind of stuff. There's 4, I call them episodes, but there's 4 issues, and then the trade that really comes not only because I like numbers and 3s and 12s and stuff like that, but it's also because of one of my favorite bands, Rush, who did 4 records and then a live record and then 4 records and a live record. So I'm doing that too.
That's good.
Everything's connected.
So this is your second tentpole title, right? So you got the Witch Hunter, and then you would say this is your second most in demand title as well, the Evil Monkey Man.
I would consider them both the tent poles because they complement each other really well, and they have the biggest casts of the most colorful characters. And even though the comics are our seed, the comics are the core. You always have to respect the source material and be true to it. But we also want to graduate them past this into other forms, and we want to be able to do animation with them. We want to be able to do live action. We want to be able to do toys. And in order to do that, you really need to have, not only can a book stand on its own, but all the individual characters can stand on their own. And with these 2 titles, there are so many colorful characters that each in their own right, can support a story. Um, we plus me and Blake come from a similar sensibility in terms of storytelling, in terms of our interests, both in like in the speculative fiction, the conspiracies, everything being connected. So because of that, the 2 titles really are very complementary, and I consider them equal tempos. The reason that we brought in the last is because the uh, the writer Joe Kitchell had come up to me at a New York Comic Con, I guess about 3 years ago, maybe, and he had a short story. And at the time, we were doing an anthology magazine called Monarch Comics Chronicles that I wanted to do sort of like a cross between the old serials, the old periodicals like the pulp the pulp magazines from the 30s and 40s,
Right.
and cross them over with like the eerie and the creepy magazines. So I wanted to have short comic book stories mixed with text pieces. And he gave me a story about Vikings. That's actually from the initial short story that we turned into the first issue of the comic. And when he gave it to me and I read it, I called him. I published the story as a text piece, but I said to him, I said, "There's more here." I said, "This is not just a story about Vikings." I said, "To me, these are like the Vikings who are solving the first X Files because these
Hmm.
Vikings are the last of their race, and the world is becoming very much more a known place than an unknown place." And these guys feel a sense of duty to go out and seek out these other mysteries, the Loch Ness monster, um, the lost civilization of Atlantis, and see, do these people, do these creatures, do these oddities, do they need to be protected from the people that they're around, or or do we need to protect the people from these things? So I said this is really more of kind of like a world hopping adventure where these guys are solving the first X Files, and that's when I, in a way, became a sort of a co-creator of it because the credits read
Right.
created by Joe Kitchell with Vincent Ferranti because he came to me with the initial story. So that's why we feel a real fondness and loyalty to the last, which is why um, you know for right now anyway, those are the only three ongoings. And when we're open to doing more,
Hmm.
but one of the things that me and Blake first talked about when we first started working together is that in order to not just survive but thrive as an independent publisher, you have to be realistic about the fact that we're nobody's first buy. We're nobody's second buy.
Yes.
We might not even be anybody's third buy, and the only way that you can start, accruing new fans and keep building your fan base is to just, slow and steady wins the race, and just always be consistent with your story, be consistent with your quality, and be consistent with your schedule. So, because people get frustrated when something isn't there. And the way that you're slowly going to go from being somebody's fourth buy to their third buy to their second buy to their first buy is to be consistent with all those things. Always be on time, always have a quality story, and always have quality art. And that is why you really need to do that. And if you go like some people have done and release too many titles, I think it's not really respectful to the fans, the retailers, the distributor, or to yourself because you're basically you're getting lost in your own shuffle. You have too many titles. You want people are completists. They want to have everything, and if they fall behind on a particular title, they'll drop it. If there are too many titles come out from a company, even if it's 9 or 10, that's way too much for people, even if for their discretionary income. So we want to allow people to say, you know what, I like the Monarch comics, and I'd like to get all of them. But be realistic. You have your bills. You have other comics that you buy that you've been buying for years. So for the foreseeable future, these are going to be the only ongoings, and that's why the other ones that you showed before, they'll be there for for short spurts and then take a break and then come back, or they'll be a one shot. And we might add a couple of more titles that are ongoing in the future, but we don't ever want to have too many, more than like say five or so, because again, people have other stuff they need to spend money on, and we really want people to be able to get all our stuff and be able to say, hey, there's I see connections between these books. But that the only way that you can do that is if you keep it light and you keep it small. And
Hmm.
there's a line that I think uh, I think Bruce Springsteen actually wrote it, but he had given it to somebody else to sing, called "From Small Things, Mama, Big Things One Day Come." And I think by keeping our lines small, I think that's the way that we're getting big, is that we're allowing people to just focus on a couple of really really good stories and a couple of really really good comics, and grow that way, and not release a bunch of titles and expect people to be like, oh, well, they have a lot of titles, they must be good. It's stretching yourself too thin and asking too much of people in terms of their money. And I like to give people value for their money, and I don't want to take too much of it. So that's basically our philosophy with what we're doing.
Yeah, and it happens with so many indie labels. I mean, they got their small presence at the con, and you arrive there, they got about 12 titles or something, and then 2 years later, they're gone,
They're
and they're
gone,
not at
right?
the con anymore.
Exactly. And even if you are say a mid-sized independent publisher, one who can afford to get a really nice, not necessarily even a booth, but like an area, like where like you literally walk onto their area and they've got a nice plush rug under them, and they've got
Yeah,
some big names, and maybe they have 8 or 10 titles. That's again, it's too much. It's too much unless you sort of build to it slowly over time. I mean, Marvel and DC, they didn't start out with 25 titles. They started out with the Fantastic Four, and they started out with um, you know, uh, entering the 60s, they had Superman, they had Batman, and then they said, oh, let's do the Justice League. In fact, that's how Marvel got the idea to do the Fantastic Four. As the story goes, that they were playing golf one day, the two publishers, and they heard that DC was doing Justice League, and they said, well, let's do something like that, and that's how Stan Lee and Jack Kirby came up with the Fantastic Four. And they built it slowly over time, and that was one of the great things that Stan Lee did, is that he kept people feeling like it was really just you and them, you being the individual fan and them being the company, which is why his soapboxes were so great. And again, I think if Marvel had decided, what, let's do 25 titles right now, I don't know if they would be around right now, or if they would be the same. But they grew it slowly over time. They're a juggernaut right now, but
yeah.
it took them a long time to get that way. I mean, for the longest time, I don't even know if they were making money or making a lot of money. And our one of the things that I realized a number of years ago is the world is so big. If you can get even a handful of people to follow you and be loyal to what you're doing, you've got you've got a business and you've got a fan base. Even if 97% of the rest of the world hasn't heard of you, you've got a fan base. I mean, again, using Babylon 5 as an example, I'm sure I could walk up to a lot of people who have never even heard of it, or have heard of it in passing if they're science fiction fans, and have never seen it. And this is the one time I stray from. I always feel that anybody's opinion, they have a right to their opinion, except for Babylon 5. Babylon 5 is the best thing ever made. So
Mhm.
I'm not actually bending on that one. So it's better than any song, and better than any comic book, any TV show, and yeah, a lot of people have never heard of it. So you just really just need to be getting back to consistent. You need to be consistent with your quality, keep it small, and that's how you get big. I don't know the exact detail of everything that's going to happen to us in the future. Although I do know time is not linear, and I know that at some point, as Blake told me, we're sitting up on a stage somewhere and we're being interviewed about how far we've come. So,
Uh-huh.
and I just know that comes about by just sort of sticking to your guns and giving people quality.
Um, Listen, guys. I mean, in order to showcase all your titles properly, we would need about 2 or 3 hours stream or something. But there was one thing that I still wanted to ask, and I'm not sure how much more time you guys have.
I have
But
about 15 minutes.
yeah,
We're about
that's
about
great.
10. Actually, I actually have a Dungeons and Dragons game at 4:45.
Yeah, Blake, you're okay with 10, 15 more minutes?
Sure.
I was just trying to just stop sharing the screen because then I can actually share it again, but maybe with some more art from the Witch Hunter if we still have time. But obviously, I'll drop the link to your website, monarchcomics.com, on just below the video title, so everyone can check you guys out on the web. By the way, the website design is really great. Blake, that's your job, isn't it? It looks really cool.
Thank
It's
you.
very
Does an
nice.
awesome job.
It's really appealing. And but yeah, what I wanted to ask, really picking up on that last note there, is obviously endurance of an indie label. And obviously Vincent already kind of spoke a little bit about how he started, but how did you guys actually, well, how did you, Vincent, actually got the ball rolling on Monarch Comics? So you started with a small presence at cons. Were you doing some sort of did you actually put the books in comic book shops? How did they actually the business model started, and how difficult it was to get kind of a foothold into selling comics.
Yeah, it started. I did the very first time I sold Witch Hunter comics was at New York Comic Con back in 1995, and that was under the old management. It's since been taken over by Reed Exhibitions, and they do a great job with all their shows. And After that, I did put books in individual shops, and I set up a website and I sold directly through the website. I did a few signings here at stores here and there. Um, I did take um, I did take it very small and very slow because at the time it was just me and my original partner who had drawn the initial comic, and then what happened was I realized that the only way that I could actually keep going and again be consistent with putting out 4 books a year is if I took on a staff. So I needed a penciler, and I needed an inker, and I needed a colorist, and I found a penciler and an inker local in New York, that I had placed an ad in the time I was working for the New York Press newspaper, and I had placed an ad in there, and that's how I met 2 guys who penciled and inked the book, and I connected with a colorist in Brazil to color I think the first 9 or 10 issues. No, probably the first 7 or 8 actually, and then I actually got a friend of mine to start coloring it. But it was a challenge to just my mindset at that point, or my business plan at that point, was I knew it would take time to build an audience and to grow a company into the amount of people that could actually help me get books into the proper distribution chains, to market them properly, to help me at shows. And I knew that was all going to take time. So my entire mindset business plan at the time was I just want to keep getting the books out, and I want to keep putting them up online, and I want to get them into as many individual stores as I can. And I would go around to I would just go personally into stores in New York City, like Jim Hanley's Universe, and just sell them the books directly. Um, and It wasn't until I actually LLC'd as Monarch in 2008 and started doing the new New York Comic Con that I was able to start really connecting with people. I connected with the guys over at Drive Through Comics so that I would be able to sell individual issues to anybody in the world that ordered them. And they're a great site where you can order an individual comic or an individual trade. All of our books are up there now. And
Hmm.
anywhere in the world that you live, they send the book to their printer lightning source, and you'll have either an individual issue or as many issues or as many trades as you want, probably in your house within 5 days.
Print on
And
demand, yeah.
that helped us. That helped us a lot in terms of visibility and in terms of legitimacy. And I met other artists. I met a lot of press doing New York Comic Con, which is where some of those interviews that you've seen came from, is people I intersected with there. And then I actually used Facebook for maybe what not a lot of people use it for, which is business. And I was
Hmm.
able to
Hmm.
connect with a lot of artists, and that's how I met Hunter, who was Blake's friend. And again, once I met Blake, we that's when we really started to get things done, because of his experience in a number of different industries, a number of different skill sets, and he also helped take some stuff off my plate to allow me to be able to breathe and do other stuff, and not have to wear like 10 different hats, but be able to sort of concentrate more on just a few things at a time. And we share all the duties basically. So Blake's not just the art director. He's my partner. It's both our company at this point.
Hmm.
So really, Blake, you really should just be co-publisher. Why don't you just put that down now? So yeah, so now it's been a challenge, but we're at the point now where um, we've got a number of different uh, distribution sources that we're talking to, um, and we're gonna go into more bookstores. We're gonna start going into more comic book stores, and we want to expand our online presence too, which is why the website is in a constant state of enhancement. So you actually talked to us at a great time because we're like really like on the cusp of really expanding a lot, and it's a little scary, but more than that, it's exciting. I mean, sometimes it is a little stressful about like how the hell are we going to do this. And I know that like when you interview some people, they want to keep just a very brave face, a very kind of like even small independent people, a very sort of corporate kind of like, oh, everything is great. It can be scary. We know what we're doing, but at the same time, we're people. So you get caught up in a lot of different stuff, and some of it's not related to what we're doing. So um, we're excited by at the point that we're at right now to be able to actually reach a lot of people that you would find that any other company is able to reach. And we're at that point now where we have a number of different distribution nodes that we can get stuff out to, and we've made connections with people like you, and we're finally starting to capitalize on those connections by actually reaching out to people, because for the longest time we didn't want to like reach out and say, hey, can you cover us, or hey, can we talk to you about distribution here, or hey, can you help us with marketing, because we're both of the same mind of, unless we have something to offer, unless we're ready to jump to the next level, we don't want to BS anybody, and we don't want to waste anybody's time. So which is why we've been like the picture you're just showing right now, we've been a very slow burn, which is again one of the things I think that I know that fate has shown me that we're on the right track, that you showed it that at that moment that I was going to say that we've been a very slow burn, but we're catching fire now. So I think we're on the right track.
Or sitting on a mountain of money.
Yeah, I love her actually. She's one of my favorite villains, and
Yeah, that's a great cover, by the way.
that's Madame Zero. Yeah.
I,
Um,
I mean, you guys, you obviously you're talking about your presence in the comic book shops, but you guys made your way into the comic book shops, but not via Diamond, was it? I mean, you're talking about the hustle here of going to the shops, and you basically retail directly to the shops. Is that correct?
well, initially that's what we did to a number of shops, but I'm not saying that that we're not going to go through Diamond, but we had a couple of different conversations with them over the years, where and I'm sure other people have had similar route, is that they said, oh, this is great, but change this, or this is great, but do that. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to be cognizant of the fact that they have a relationship with all these stores. So there are certain things that we've tweaked in order to make things more mass market without sacrificing the quality or the integrity of the stories. But with what's going on now with COVID-19, we
Yes.
everybody was on pause. So going into the second half of this year and into next year, I had a conversation with them right before this happened about what our long-term plans were, and I told them we would be following up with them, in the latter half of 2020. So that's still something that we're going to do, but we also are realistic about the fact that there are a lot of different ways that you can distribute books, and there's no reason that we shouldn't do all of them, because again, different people get their entertainment in different ways, and there are a lot of different ways that you can distribute books. So we want to do it in as many different ways as possible, just to be able to spread ourselves around, because you never know where you're going to connect with the right fan base, or the right business person who's like, huh, I wouldn't have seen this if I hadn't been here, and sometimes that's not a comic book store. Sometimes it's a bookstore. Sometimes it's a different type of store entirely that happens to carry periodicals. And that's one of the things that Blake, told me, because a couple of times I've gotten frustrated, like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done this, maybe we should have done that. And he's like, you know what? Doctors go to school, and it's $1 million education. So maybe we've spent money in certain places that we should have spent other places, or maybe we did this first and then that second. But it's all in education, and the fact that we continue to improve the quality of what we're doing and increase our reach shows that we're learning as we go, and we're moving in the right direction.
Absolutely.
I
Well, I
actually
mean,
have to jump off in
yeah,
like a minute, so but we'd be happy to talk to you again in a bit after after this thing is all over, and if you wanted to catch up with us again, we'd be happy to sort of
yeah, I think so. I
remark
mean,
and stuff.
yeah, I mean, this whole situation now, obviously, with the comic book shops closing for the time being, and not everyone or not no one knowing exactly how the model is going to be once they reopen, or if they reopen. Hopefully they will. But obviously, it's definitely worth coming back in. I don't know, maybe 6 months time down the road and see how actually what happened.
Yeah, we'd be happy to talk to you. Yeah, we've had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um,
And just to recap, just before you guys go, so obviously your first port of call is your own website, so monarch.com, right? Monarch Comics,
monarchcomics.com. Yep.
monarchcomics.com.
Yep.
And well, once obviously these quarantine lockdowns, and you guys are still going to have ongoing presence at Comic Cons, right?
Yes, but we've actually started doing more shows since me and Blake started working together, because we live in different parts of the country. He's able to hit certain shows that are easier for him to reach, and then he always comes up here for the big show, New York Comic Con. And we also have another associate of ours, Matt Herring, who did the Secret Identity podcast for 10 years, and Matt is really helped us out with marketing as well. So I go to some signings with Matt, and I go to some smaller shows with Matt, and he's been very instrumental in helping us network with a lot of industry professionals, and actually getting us more fans, because he promotes us, and he also has books that we have a Monarch Books division that we recently started. Matt
Right.
did a book on the unauthorized guide to Doctor Who. And he also has books on a number of different bands that he's done, like UFO in Asia. And he also has a fiction title about sea monkeys. It's called Monkey See, Sea Monkey. So you'll be able to get all that stuff on our site very shortly.
That's great, branching out. And if people want to find you guys on those cons, because obviously you'll find you guys directly there. Where do you advertise your presence at cons? Is it on your Facebook page of Monarch Comics? Is that the
Yes.
best place to check it out?
Yeah, the Monarch Comics Facebook page, the Evil Monkey Man Facebook page, the Evil Monkey Man site, and our Monarch Comics site. We also, between me and Blake, and the other artists and writers that are affiliated with Monarch, we also advertise on our personal pages as well, and we share, and then people share from there. So we make sure we spread it as far as we can on Facebook and other social media.
All right. Well, I'll drop the links to those as well under
Oh, great.
the video description. Okay.
Okay,
So
great. Our website, actually, the store, if you want to put the monarchcomics.com site, people can get all of our books through there, and they also can connect to drive-through on the
Drive
Monarch
Comics,
Comics
yeah.
site. Yeah, and also you should send me your regular email address, and I don't know how many of our books that you have, but I can actually send you PDFs to your email address.
Well, that's very nice of you.
Books. Sure.
By the way, I wanted to just one last question. You're doing now the trade paperbacks of the Witch Hunter, which I think is going to have 4 issues in each. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's going to be consistent with the other titles as well. It's going to be 4 issues of each of our titles per trade. So I think between 128 and 144 pages, depending on the length of the specific issues.
But how long is those trade paperbacks going to take to actually catch up with the series? You're planning to release one of those quarterly as well for the issues that are already done?
Well, right now, because we have certain conversations that were set up for the fall because of what's going on now. Um, again, you don't want to tax people's income, and you want to
Hmm. Hmm.
you want to have that sense of expectation. I'm a big fan of cliffhangers. You don't want to put them out too close to each other, because then you lose all the fun of waiting and wondering what's going to happen next. And being able to just think about it yourself. So at this point, I wouldn't see more than, say, maybe two a year, at least for now. And so it'll take, as far as Witch Hunter, it'll take several years uh, for me to catch up to where I am now, in terms of
Yeah,
issue.
makes sense. Yeah.
And then the other titles would be on the we would stagger it. We don't want to put out a Witch Hunter trade necessarily at the same time as an Evil Monkey Man trade, or the last trade. We want people to be able to breathe and enjoy each one, in their own time, and be able to afford them. So, but I mean, they'll be close enough together that they won't be like, oh, what was the last one? I don't remember. But yeah, I would say you'll see, you should see a couple a year from us, and yeah, and then eventually we'll just catch up, and you have to, I guess, just wait for the next four issues to get done.
Yeah, that's it. I myself am a big fan of floppies, but a lot of people
So
prefer the trades. So
we both are, and then I,
yeah,
I don't want those to go away. But some people just like the trades, and there's definitely a
yeah.
market for them. So we want to make both available.
It's probably going to go that way in the future. I'm not sure, but let's see what happens. I have to let you guys go
Okay.
because obviously you do have other things to do. I appreciate very much you guys coming here. Um, Blake, I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. Thanks for throwing me in here at the last second.
Yeah, well, pleasure. And Vincent, thank you very much for finally making this happen.
Oh, thank you for being so patient with me. I appreciate it.
And again, you can now, once this gets finished, will be uploaded on YouTube forever. So you can keep on sharing the link if you feel like it on your social pages, and people can always review the interview. You gave the whole spiel here, so it's pretty
Cool.
good.
Thanks
All
so
right,
much, Lewis. We'll remain in touch on Facebook. I'll definitely keep you up to date on stuff in between the interviews.
no problem at all.
All right.
Thank you very much, guys.
Stay
Bye
safe
bye.
and stay well.
See you later.
See you
Bye bye.
later. Bye bye.